I just wanted to welcome everybody. I am Joan Freeman. I am serving as the interim chair of Cafes. It's quite a privilege. And we all know that Cafes is a community association for environmental sustainability. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. As per the bylaws, I'm honored to chair this meeting, and Jerry Churchill will serve as secretary and Philippa as timekeeper. Good luck on that, Philippa. And Jennifer Humphreys, who will introduce in a few moments, was going to be our moderator. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are on the unceded and unconquered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We are grateful to live in this beautiful landscape and thank all the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of and continue to take care of Ottawa region's land, water, ecology, and air. Now, just a bit of housekeeping. We're recording this meeting to share the presentation and help in note-taking for the AGM, and we ask you to mute yourself and note that we will use the chat function for comments and questions. So moving on, next with your agreement, I'd like to move that we approve the agenda as you've received it already in your documents and found in the chat. Just like to say that the agenda for tonight is critical for Cafes' growth and development. Coming out of this AGM, Cafes will have the priorities, focus, and setup required to becoming a networking and supportive organization that will be needed by all community groups in the city as they grapple with our tough environmental challenges. Maybe we can be a model for the city if we'll be ahead of them. So can I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda, please?
I'll move that we adopt the agenda.
Thank you.
I will second it.
Madeline seconded, Dinah moved. Seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted. I forgot to say, excuse me, I should have a point of order here. If you have any objections, please raise your hand. And if you put an electronic hand, just click on under the reaction button. There's a little click for hand. If you do that, then it'll move you up to the first tile and I can see it better. And then answer any questions. We will try to work on a consensus basis, but certainly if you've got any questions, we need to discuss them before we decide. So moving on to the second item, just to approve the minutes of the 2022 AGM. That was last year, our first ever AGM. This is our second, and you'll see the link to the AGM in the chat. Can I have a mover and a seconder? And if you have any objections, please raise your hand.
I'll move for you, Joan.
Thank you. Seconder. Mary Hegan. No objections. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so seeing that there are no objections, the minutes from last year's AGM are adopted. So I'd just like to warmly welcome all of you members and guests, as this is only our second AGM and we are a very young organization in the formal sense. Let me say a few words about membership. We are in a transition from an established community network to an incorporated nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2010, but it was only in January 2021 that we were incorporated. Our legacy membership was composed of active, silent, and inactive subscribers. That's from 2010 on. For 2022, was a transition year, and now in 2023, we've moved to a formal membership where you're asked to sign up so that we know who our members are, and we are asked to contribute membership fees if you're able to do so without hardship. There'll be more about that later. Our bylaws state that this official annual meeting is for the members of CAFE. However, I'm empowered to welcome guests. So I would, at this point, welcome guests and any person who hasn't signed up as a member. Could you please identify yourself? You're very welcome to observe, but we ask you not to vote. If you just raise your hand, then Mary Stewart can take a note of who are the guests. And we also would welcome any guests who wish, after they've been listening, to become a member, and Laura will put the link for this in the chat. So just one or two other thoughts. Not only is tonight's meeting critical for Cafe's growth and development, it comes at a critical moment. The IPCC report on Monday was unequivocal. Somehow we have to cut emissions in half within 7 years by 2030, or we will face continually worsening and life-threatening climate impacts. And on top of that, there's an extinction crisis and a huge loss of nature going on. And here in Ottawa, we have a new mayor and council that has allowed 25,000 trees to be cut down under cover of night. And there's a housing crisis. Vulnerable people in Ottawa and around the world are least protected now, and our policies and actions continue to put them at risk. And and then there's the big picture. If we zoom out, the war in Ukraine, we've had over 2 years of a pandemic, and there's numerous weather events. So all in all, a very critical and pivotal time. But I just don't. It's not hopeless. Today, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, sent out a tweet which I thought was quite apt. And if anybody has seen the movie Anywhere, Everywhere, All at Once, you'll know what he means. He says, "We have never been better equipped to solve the climate challenge, but our world needs climate action on all fronts now." In other words, everything, everywhere, all at once. And so tonight we turn to getting ourselves organized and ready to help communities with their environmental emergencies now. And that's going to be the focus of this evening. Next, I would like to introduce the moderator for this meeting, Jennifer Humphreys. Jennifer is a communications professional with many years of experience. She's now retired. Cafes is extremely fortunate to be able to benefit from her passion for trees and the urban canopy. And Jennifer has been acting as one of 2 senior volunteers that animates the trees, green space, and canopy work. And many of you know her from her chairing of the Cafes Tree Caucus. Jennifer is also former chair of the Glebe Community Association Environment Committee and is currently co-chair of the board of the Glebe Report, Glebe's independent community newspaper. So welcome, Jennifer, and thank you for moderating our evening for us.
Thank you very much, Joan. Welcome everyone to this preeminent event in the Cafes year. Je vous accueille chaleureusement à cette réunion importante que j'ai le plaisir de modérer. Commençons avec la présentation des membres du conseil d'administration qui participent ce soir. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the current board members. And when I call your name, would you please electronically raise your hand, and then you'll jump to the kind of front of the tiles as well. We have with us Jerry Churchill, Secretary. There's Jerry. We have Mary Hegan, Director. Mary's waving. Hi. We have John Milton, Director. There's John. Dinah Robinson, Interim Treasurer. And Joan Freeman, whom you've just met, Interim Chair. And I am not sure if we have Akhil Mesiwala, Director, with us. Akhil, are you here? No, I don't believe so. Maybe he'll join us later. We have received regrets from Liz Bernstein, who had a scheduling conflict for tonight. Liz is our excellent former chair and longstanding co-leader of the Cafes Network, together with Angela Keller-Herzog. This evening, we also miss the powerful presence of Barbara Ramsey, who stepped back from the chairing role due to family reasons this past year. Barbara led Cafes so ably for most of the year, and you may remember her presenting the financial statements at the last AGM. Next, I would like to introduce our staff. So please, staff, raise your electronic hand as I call your name. Angela Keller-Herzog, Executive Director. Thank you, Angela. Mary Stewart, Climate Coordinator. There's Mary. And Laura French, Part-Time Administrator. That's Laura. Thank you so much. And now, would board members and staff kindly lower your electronic hands? Thank you very much. So now it's my pleasure to hand the proceedings over to Angela Keller-Herzog, our incredibly hardworking Executive Director, to present to the membership an overview of the past year and offer some forward-looking remarks.
All right. Thank you very much, Jennifer. It is so exciting to have so many of you folks here. We have been doing a lot of organization building over I think the COVID period really has been the envelope of time where Cafes has grown and structured itself and started to formalize and figure out our governance. And I think that some of that stuff is behind the scenes, but it then manifests in terms of us becoming a more impactful, a more resourced, a more able, and a more interesting organization. So this is really exciting to have this AGM, and for the first time we really have our members standing ready to be counted, as we have done this transition from the network based in the Google group to being have to sign up the form membership, which again, it's not always fun, but it makes us, I think, more solid, more robust. Also, I'm very happy to be able to present our impact report. So let me go to that. And now I'm going to have to share my screen number 2, share, and set it to the full view. Hopefully that will work. There we are. Can you see my screen? Jerry, can you nod if you can see it? I'm seeing your tile. Okay, great.
We see it.
All right, so I'm just going to run through this quickly. So Cafes has started to do more formalized projects. We have a project with Carleton on community engagement, working with students, connecting them to community associations. We have a really nice collaboration with a group of 7 others on boosting green bin use in MURBs. We have continued from the previous year, the Canopy Regeneration Project. We have done an exciting climate action survey. And actually, Mary, could you put the link on the survey? The survey is still alive for a few days, but then we're going to harvest all the results and cut the subscription to the software. And it's a bias survey because we are surveying people who are interested, keen, concerned on climate issues, but nonetheless, very interesting results. And also another project that can connect to all of you here is our community environment and climate calendar. So if any of you are with smaller organizations putting on community events, please let us know. We'll post it on the calendar. And also if any of you suffer from the fear of missing out because you haven't checked in with all your emails, you can load this calendar into your own iCals or Google calendars so that you always are part of the network and you see what the different events from the different community organizations are. And this is mostly local environment and climate. We did a lot of citizen engagement, as this slide calls it. The 2022 climate strike was a big one again. Many of you would have been there for the 2019 one where we had around 10,000 people out in the streets. And then Bill 23 is also something we organized around. We had the Cafes, Tree and Climate Caucuses regularly, where we had really good discussion on topical issues. And then we also have been a key participant in the People's Official Plan Coalition. So then we had events. So the shingle on the bottom right there is like exactly 1 year ago, 1 year, 1 day, where we had a big keynote speaker at our first ever AGM. We had a pollinator plant sale. Check it out. That's a really nice picture of both Barbara and Joan. And we built tree cages, we rescued trees, we tabled at conferences. And then really the highlight of eventing in 2022 was around the municipal election, where Cafes was the central organizer for no less than 4 mayoral eco debates, where we organized these events in Barhaven, in Orleans, in Canada, and finally in Centertown. And I think we're successful in making climate and the environment part of the municipal election. We also engaged the city on a number of key files, including the high performance development standard, arguing that we should be building better, not just putting money into retrofits. We did a new councillors briefing fairly soon after the election. And we have also, through a big team of thinkers, some of whom are here tonight, come up with I can't say book. It's not a book, but it is a voluminous content-filled document with the Cafes recommendations for the 2022-26 term of council priorities. And now that the municipal council has passed the budget, that will start to be the next sort of big thing on the agenda. And so we did advocacy on these issues, climate finance, high performance development standard, also climate resiliency. Some of you will be aware that, and that's not so much impact from last year, but now looking forward, we are looking at organizing a series of workshops. Now let me try to get rid of this and stop sharing. There we go. So Cafes is looking at organizing a series of community dialogue workshops, probably around 10 of them that we'll try to distribute throughout town, to start to get the first real conversation going on what communities have responsibility for as we are starting to see the climate crisis manifest, as we're starting to see extreme weather events. What is it that we are asking the city to prepare for? What is it that community associations should be doing for neighborhoods? What are the elements of readiness that households should have ready? And this is different in different neighborhoods. So that's one of the reasons why we're not just doing one workshop, but we're going to do in-person workshops, both for community building and to get a sense of the different issues. Let me just say a couple of more things in the forward-looking sense. As we are doing this organization building, we are trying to figure out how we can be an excellent network. Because one of the things that we really want to do is create spaces through the caucuses, for example, where people can dialogue, they can get each other's ideas, they can share resources, they can learn from each other, and they can be better together in looking at some of our issues of the day. It's clear that Cafes wants to be an issue-based advocacy organization. We are a watchdog on our municipality. That is something that we very strongly pinned in our mandate. That said, of course, we are nonpartisan. So it's not political advocacy, it's issue-based advocacy and centered on sustainability, on climate, on environment. As we're growing in our organizational structure, and Jerry, you will remember the early drafts and then the many discussions around this, we'll probably have an organizational member roundtable. And I'm thinking that we'll do that at the other end of the calendar, so that if our AGM is in the spring, maybe we'll do that in the fall. Last summer, a whole team of us worked really hard with the election coming and the eco debates. I think this summer we should take a little bit of a break and enjoy a summer holiday, as do many of the community associations. And I guess we also want to think hard on how we can serve our members. We need to understand from all of you, what is the value added that you want to realize from cafes, and what's the value added that you see. And that's one of the reasons why, as strongly advocated by Mary Hegan, one of our board members, on the agenda today, we have made time for a member discussion. So, and we'll be taking good notes on that. And I'm going to stop there, but we look to you to tell us what your hopes and aspirations are for this organization for yourself.
Thank you, Angela. So now we do indeed, as Angela flagged, want to hear from our members. So we prepared 2 questions for discussion, and we will be going into breakout rooms with your permission. The 2 questions are, 1, what do you value most about cafes? And 2, what would you like from cafes in the coming year? So we will have about 20 minutes, so you can split it up, 10 minutes for one, 10 minutes for the other, as your group wishes. And then we will rejoin the full group, and we will have a rapporteur. Yes, indeed. Could you please assign in your group a rapporteur, someone who will come back and do a 2-minute report back to the full group. And then we'll see if everybody's thinking the same things or not. But it should be very interesting. So with that, I think you were already assigned to a group. So you will have to agree to join. And in each group, there will be a facilitator and a note taker, but we will ask the rapporteur whom you will select to speak. So thank you so much, and look forward to hearing back from you in a few minutes. So we would like to hear from group number 1, and that is only about 2 minutes from each rapporteur.
Okay.
So who's group
Dinah
1?
was group number 1 reporter, and she's going to unmute herself and tell us great stuff.
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize we were group 1.
I know, I didn't notice.
But I was reviewing the notes, so handy. I think we had representation from a good cross section of neighborhoods, central, south, west. I'm not sure how far east we were. The common thread around the value of cafes really had to do with the ability to mobilize resources and gather and disseminate large amounts of information and resources to really mobilize people for things like the most recent Environment Committee meeting. And green space protection and projects was another thread in the value of cafes at this point. And definitely working with Angela. So for ideas for next year, definitely follow on work related to tree canopy and helping people with greater collaboration and participation in their own neighborhoods. So definitely like the climate resiliency workshops and things like that will be almost like a train the trainer model, I could see. And so what else came up? Really just helping other people work more with on issues with the city, like the Environment Committee and other opportunities, so that they can get their neighbors more involved, instead of it just being people
Right.
at the community association level. So
Thank you, Dinah.
that's good.
Good, thank you. So group 2, Jerry Churchill.
Hello, yeah. I'll time myself here so I don't go over. So the first thing that was cool is that we had 3 or 4 people who were brand new to cafes. So that was really nice to see. They all seem like engaging and interesting people, and that's pretty cool to have them on board. Some of the points that came up with valuing cafes was the quality of advocacy and the timeliness and relevance of the advocacy and the work we do. We were mentioning hard work from many people produces high quality information. The common voice that cafes creates results in a powerful impact in the city of Ottawa. Cafes is very responsive and they act quickly to advocate for issues as they arise. Cafes creates a broad tent to unite other environmental groups in the city. And they provide high quality resources to community associations, specifically education and the projects that we do. They update people regularly via email. They amplify important ideas to other parties who may be interested. And they also provide focal points to engage people on their specific interests, for example, waste, procurement, trees, that kind of thing. And then on what they'd like to see from cafes this year, we want cafes to bolster community associations by amplifying their voices and encouraging more people to join community associations. Discussion on developing a strategy to use advocacy resources most effectively, specifically hitting hot topic issues when the time is right and being ready for those things when they happen. And then being opportunistic by responding quickly to pressing issues and take advantage of the fact that people are motivated, general public members are motivated at that time and trying to grab them kind of while the issues are hot. And then developing a set of questions that people can ask at council meetings. To get the discussion was that council's not asking the right questions before making decisions. So trying to kind of tackle that thing as well. That's it.
Thank you, Jerry. And now someone from group 3 to report, please.
Was that my group? I think so. Again, I apologize for not designating somebody to present because I thought the idea was that we were not supposed to present as organizational people, but I'm also very bad at taking notes. So generally speaking, the values that I got from our conversations were that, or the things that were valued was bringing together so many passionate advocates from all around the city, different walks of life, different age groups. The quality of work that has been done so far. Specifically, there was a few mentions for the debates. And I have to say that was a lot of work and I didn't even end up getting to most of them. So thank you everyone who put time into that and who attended as well. And just generally the knowledge and information that has been shared with all the different organizations and CAs in the city. I think that's been a positive impact for the last year, especially because it's been so much activity going on. So that's kind of the summary of what I got. And forgive me if I miss anything, everybody who was in my group. And then some of the things to focus on this year and in the future, developer influence and what organizations can do to curb that or manage it. The upcoming workshops, a few people have mentioned that they're really excited about that. That's great. Tangible ways for the everyman, I'll say, to take action. So I think that probably refers to things like the removal of invasive plants and that kind of thing, things that you can really get your hands onto and not just sit in a meeting and question if you're even being heard.
That's about, we're at about 2 minutes.
Sorry. Okay.
No.
Looking forward to local events, participation of seniors and how we can engage seniors more. Somebody mentioned that they're hoping that cafes can be like an organizing hub, which could be a very broad thing or a very narrow focused thing. Definition of Oh, yes. So I think it was Chris mentioned hoping to have more definition of our role versus that of the FCA, which is the Federation for Community Associations, I believe, because there is a bit of a crossover there. And if we can both have our separate work and do it even better, then that would be cool. And then bringing attention to local businesses that are environmentally positive and how we can support them and how we could probably work together with them.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so yeah, lots of discussion. That's great. So now I think we have to move to group 4.
I think that's me. So I'm gonna go a little extra speedy. I'm going to, okay, so what we talked about that everyone valued in cafes the most was really kind of common theme of how cafes contributes and facilitates climate conversations and connections between groups, really because we are more powerful in numbers. So that's how cafes really contributes to the climate conversation in Ottawa and action. A very common theme, that was a really good discussion on that. It's really incredible how cafes is familiar with the city as well and how the city works. So that really helps to bring that connection between the citizens and the people that want to be involved. So cafes really helps to mobilize support and creating like informed feedback for the city was a really good point, and how cafes like is able to frame around rules and offering options that can be framed as rules. And in terms of what we would like from cafes in the coming year is a few different various things, but we talked about tree canopy in Centertown and how perhaps that's a really important area to focus on, connecting groups in terms of biodiversity for native plants. We talked about creating more climate conversation in Barrhaven. Of course, all of this is in more detail in the notes, but we also talked about how idling in Ottawa is an important issue that could be a feasible option to tackle.
Thank you, Philippa. And now we'll hear from group 5.
So that's probably me in group 5, group with Angela. I'm great at taking notes, except that I have a hard time reading my writing after, so I have to learn to take notes on my laptop.
50% there, Rolly, 50%.
Yeah, so anyways, I won't spend a lot of time on what people in our group value because it's quite repetitious. I'll just mention, someone mentioned the technical analyses of some complex issues, policy issues and zoning bylaw and so on, and the expertise that, of course, Cafes brings to the table. Others mentioned that as well, so I'm going to skip that. Bringing people together, the social component. I don't think that came out yet. That's very important. And connecting various organizations in the region, so it's a kind of a hub in that way. As far as the way it reaches out to different groups, and Cafe is a place you can turn to for a multitude of issues. So I think it's pretty well the same as everybody else. As far as what to look forward to, about 5 of us were able to get a kick at this can, and then we ran out of time. So what we value from cafes, steward. Someone brought up the specific position of stewardship coordinator. Can Cafe play a role in pressuring the city to hire a permanent staff that would be in that position, be in that role? Also helping understand the city's housing policy and zoning bylaw, because that'll be important in the coming year because of Bill 23. Someone mentioned mobilize people in Ottawa. I think it was Teresa Peluso mentioned that. There are a lot of people who are concerned about climate, but we have to find a way to mobilize them. We need I think someone also mentioned the idea of a climate, the Youth Climate Corps, which is a strategy or a program being advocated by SETCLIME, the Climate Emergency Unit. And also the importance of providing educational resources to people who want to learn more about climate. But I'm going to mention this because I didn't get a chance to mention it, but just mentioning that my role, what I see a big role for cafes, the mobilization of seniors in particular. And I have a meeting with Seth Klein of the Climate Emergency Unit to get his input about how we can, across Canada, and of course that would apply to Ottawa, mobilization of seniors. So those are the kinds of things that people would like cafes to be involved with in the coming year.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Rolly. Yeah, you're reminding me of the third act that Bill McKibben
Yes.
Bill McKibben is spearheading, and Seth Klein would be a great help to mobilize, I think, the third act here as well. So thanks, everyone. Certainly, all of these comments have been recorded by note takers. They will be pulled together into a kind of a what you said report, or what we said, to be shared with all members in due course. And I think that will help guide our year very nicely. Lots of pain sur la planche, I think, as they say. So tonight we have a number of bylaw amendments. We have a number of motions going forward. But first of all, we have a number of bylaw amendments to consider. And Angela, could I please ask you to share your screen, and then I will walk everyone through the bylaw amendments. So unless you have a critical question of clarification, I would ask that we hold discussion until the end of the presentation and until the motion has been read. And I will read the motion. Please, if you do have a concern or a question, raise your hand electronically, and that way we'll be able to see you come to the top of the list of tiles, photos, camera shots. So here we are with the definitions. We're moving down to the first change, and that is at item 5. And Carolyn Herbert is asking if the print could be larger. I don't know if it can, Angela. If it could, that would be great. Worth a try. And Erwin, you've already raised your hand. Is there something you'd like to comment on here?
Should be able to just zoom it in beyond 100%, Ange.
I have a comment about something much further down. So, but
Okay. Can we wait?
You asked to form a queue for questions, so I formed the queue.
All right, that's perfect.
I'll wait my time. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So here we have banking business, and we're striking out the Bank of the Corporation shall be Alterna, Centretown Branch, Ottawa, Canada. Signing authorities of the corporation shall be Liz Bernstein, Angela Keller-Herzog, and Barbara Ramsey, and that's all being struck out. There will be a change in the last line. There shall be 2 signatures required on all. Instead of checks, we're putting withdrawals, which would include checks. But withdrawals are often made electronically through Interac or other arrangements.
Technically, it doesn't include checks because we don't have checks, but
Okay.
all withdrawals, yes.
It would if we were to get checks at some point. Okay, so we will go through to the next change. And yes, please form a queue if there are questions, as Erwin has done. Membership dues. In the past, the bylaw said there shall be no dues payable by members for membership in the corporation. This, as you already know, is changing, has changed. Membership, and so it will now read, membership fees or dues may be charged and changed from time to time by the corporation with approval at the members' meeting with appropriate notice. And you have received notice, and there is information in the packages that went to everyone who registered. So continuing on, we come to a number of administrative changes here. This relates to the board and executive director. In the event that the board determines that a member should be expelled or suspended from membership in the corporation, instead of president, the executive director or other such officer as may be designated by the board shall provide 20 days notice of suspension or expulsion to the member and reasons for the proposed suspension or expulsion. And again, the member may make written submissions to the instead of president, the executive director, or other such officer designated. And there's a notice period which remains the same. And similarly, in the event that no written submissions are received by instead of the president, executive director, the executive director or other such officer may be may go forward with the rest of the bylaw. So this
And
is,
I think the main change here is just from the template. The nomenclature was that the chief executive officer is called president, and in our usage, the title is executive director.
that's right. Angela is reminding me that this is a set of bylaws that have come from a template. So it's just being modified over time to suit where we want to go as cafes. So further down, quorum at members' meetings, instead of a majority of members, it says shall be a minimum of 20 eligible members present at the opening of the meeting. And I believe tonight we have well over that, so that's great. Further down, there's a question of remuneration of directors. Shall not receive remuneration from the organization. And there's a strikeout at 27. The directors shall be elected or hold office for a term expiring that are in close of the next meeting. We're setting out more clearly what the term of office will be. And there will be a director renewal strategy in use at the board by the board at the start of their term, and which is approved or amended at subsequent annual meetings of the members. And the director renewal strategy is the focus of another motion, which was also provided to you. And this is an addition, the director's conflict of interest declaration. All directors shall identify and declare any conflict of interest when it arises during discussion or in advance of voting on an issue. Recusal is the suggested remedy. Officers, the board shall be responsible for oversight, deliberate on strategic priorities and approve the strategic plan, shall review, deliberate on and approve financial statements, budgets and fundraising and evaluation plans. And that's an addition. And further down, again, modifying so that the chief executive officer is correctly named as executive director. Once approved by the board has been added. So this relates to implementing strategic plans and policies. They must be approved by the board before they are implemented by the executive director or others. And the executive director shall be an ex officio member of the board, non-voting capacity.
There we go.
And that's it. And we have a queue for questions and comments. And I believe that Jerry Churchill is also able to answer questions as they arise. So
I
we'll
do want
go
to caution,
to-
just as the timekeeper, that we are running like a little close to time, so we'll just keep it. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. We are at 8:13, and we actually need to move fairly quickly. Yes, but we will go to Erwin and then to Aida. So Erwin, please.
Yeah, thank you. I have a comment about, I think it is paragraph 20, if you want to scroll back to that, about the quorum for membership meetings. I would, to me, a minimum of 20 members is a pretty high standard. I don't know how many members we have at the moment, but it might be wiser to say something like 10% of the membership rather than 20, because depending on the issue and in the passage of time and the circumstances, you know, it would be a shame to not be able to conduct business. So most groups that I've seen, they bring that quorum fairly low in order to be able to keep going.
Thank you for that comment. I don't know if, yeah, Jillian Cooper is saying it's a good suggestion. I do understand the reasoning there. Circumstances can prevent people from being available for an AGM. Jerry, I don't know if you're able to comment on the discussion that was held around that. Or
Yeah.
if you, and if the board might be willing to accept a friendly amendment on this point of quorum.
Yeah, we actually talked about this somewhat extensively over several months, and we initially had something a bit less restrictive in there, but then Angela or Mary, maybe Mary Hegan, or you, maybe you, Angela, want to comment on why we kept it this way? Yeah.
It's definitely a tricky thing. So because when we had this this governance committee, that was before the membership drive, and we didn't actually know how many members we would have by the time of this AGM. So I'd like Laura to speak to how many members we have right now. About. I know it's been changing this afternoon.
This has been the craziest day I've had in months. So roughly as of, we'll call it 6 p.m., we had, I believe, 110 individual members and 22 organizational members. And each organization is allowed 2 individual members themselves. So that's an additional, potentially additional 44 people. So that's incredible numbers.
Good. So doing the math, thank you, Laura, that's 154 potential voters.
Mhm.
So 10% of that would be 15 or 16, depending on whether you wanted to round up members. So that is a little, you know, I mean, it gives wiggle room. So I don't know, Aida and Dan, do you have comments on the same issue, or are they different? Just quickly, if Aida, or is it a different issue you're questioning?
No, same issue. I would say express it in terms of percentage, not absolute numbers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aida. And Dan?
My comment can wait. My comment can wait till
Okay.
the end.
Thank you. I guess the question here is, we will have, Jerry, you will be moving this. Does the board feel strongly to remain at what is here, or would there be some interest in accepting a friendly amendment?
So
I'm
in
fine with
terms of governance, the members actually rule, and this is the point of a membership driven organization. So I think that we can discuss here and agree on an amendment, and
Okay.
and I have the document in Word, so I can make the change.
Thank you. Joan, your comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say similar to Angela, and as a chair of the board, I'd be fine with the suggestion that Aaron put forward of 10%.
So may I ask then if there's anyone in the group here tonight who would object to this change to raise their hand? If you would not object to that change, please do not raise your hand. And Joan, I know your hand is raised and Dan, you can leave your hand raised. Janet, did you want to say something in this regard?
Yeah, you know, I've had this issue with other organizations, and the view is that 10% is too low, because essentially with a very small number of members could be coming out and changing a whole lot of things about your organization, if that's a concern. And we went through this in one of my recent organizations, amendments for bylaws, and we had a lawyer give us advice, and he had actually recommended 20%. Yeah, and we even had restrictions on that. You needed to at least include in that 20% some of our board members, because they had to be members. So because you had to be concerned as to whether there was I hate to say the word takeover, it's not really what I'm looking for, but you have to be concerned that a members can call a meeting and with as few as 15 or 16 in your organization could be changing a whole lot of things.
Mhm.
So that, anyway, I just think you need to think very carefully. And what I would advise is rather than changing it on the fly tonight, because you're just recently a new organization having got members, is that you simply leave it as it is and you take it under advisement for the next annual meeting. Thank you.
That's an interesting possibility.
I do
think-
just want to
However-
throw in, sorry, I was just going to throw in that we are falling about 5 minutes behind now at this moment.
Thank you, Philippa.
That is certainly fine if it becomes too complicated.
Right.
See how it goes this year. But I was just starting my experience that these high thresholds can become a problem when they shouldn't. If nefarious things happen, that's a whole other story. Then the issue is not really quorum, but the issue is what's happening with the organization. You know, so that's that those dire predictions are a bit of a scarecrow. But if you want to reconsider and for next year, I think that should be just fine, because right now you are a mighty, strong organization. But in 2 years' time, for whatever reason, you may be down to 50 members, you know, and then the year after that, you've got 200 members. So it's hard to tell.
Thank you, Erwin. I think we'll hear from 2 other speakers, and then I think we will make the decision to possibly leave where, unless there's some other compelling reason to change it, leave it where it is, knowing that a bylaw change can be made next year as well. Because there's a new board members coming in, can reconsider this also. So Stefan and then Janet, and then I think we will call the question unless there's some other item that needs to be raised. Stefan?
Was Dan not next to speak?
Dan said he could wait till the end after the quorum piece. So yes, I will after Stefan and Janet.
Mine is not on the quorum. It's on a different thing.
Oh, okay. Janet, is yours on the quorum?
Yeah, so I've been listening to the conversation and I heard compelling reasons to put a percentage in this year.
Yeah.
And we know that next year we can always review. So why don't we begin with 10? Because that seems to be the comfort. And I would propose 10%. And then we look at advisement of whether we ought to go to 20. I've been in those conversations and it comes down to, you know, a question of transparency and who do we represent. And it really brings up values with organizations when we move from 10 to 20. But I would invite us all to consider the percentage, because that seems to be the common way that bylaws are formed for not-for-profits. And so why don't we go that way and then look at, do we increase it over the next year?
So if I may propose then that Erwin raised it. Erwin, would you like to move the friendly amendment and one of the other speakers to second it? And we will make this change. If there's any objection to making the change.
Sure, I'll be happy to, but if it's a friendly amendment, it's not really a motion, then the mover of the amendment would have to say, yes, I agree.
Okay, Jerry.
And I would second if needed, but if it's friendly, then we don't need that.
Super, thank you. All right, then we will move to other comments. I think we'll leave that discussion there. Stefan and then Dan. Stefan?
Mine can be very quick.
I'm sorry, I don't think we have heard whether the friendly amendment is accepted.
Oh, Jerry, I believe you said you did accept it?
Yeah, I've got that noted and accepted.
Okay, Jerry was the mover, so I think that's fine. Thank you. Stefan?
Okay, so it's just something that I found a bit odd. 31B, if you want to go down there. It's the director's conflict of interest declaration. I just find very odd that it ends with recusal is the suggested remedy. It seems like you shall identify and declare any conflict of interest, but we suggest you recuse. But to me, that seems a bit weak as as part of the bylaws. I don't have any solutions. I'm not an expert in bylaws. I'm just putting it out there. If someone else feels strongly about this, go ahead and speak. If it's not an issue, then I'm fine with it.
I'm just going to
Jerry,
throw in
can
a
you-
caution. We're about 10 minutes behind.
Yeah, Jennifer, if I could, can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah,
The board spent about the better part of 4 months at various board meetings doing exactly what we're doing now, discussing the little details of this document. And we went over lots of meetings and we're at risk of using the whole AGM. So I'd like to just suggest we got it this far. Let's approve it where it is. And next year's board will have all year to work on these small details. Just because I think we're never going to get anywhere if we don't just get on with this. Sorry, guys. We did a lot of this already. So
I understand that, but you want the members to vote on it. And so if the boarders had a discussion about it, that's nice, but the members didn't. And so that's all I'm saying is I find it odd. If no one else finds it odd, that's fine. I have no issue.
okay. Thank you for that, Stefan. And again, as Jerry said, that's something that could be modified next year. And I think that comment is in the recording and will be in the minutes. So the board will look at that. Thank you. James, we have several other speakers. Please, could you keep your comments fairly quick so that we can move on to the other, to the motion. James, and then Aida and
I thought Dan was next.
Dan, sorry, Dan.
In fact, in terms
Dan,
of
Thank you.
please.
So these comments can be taken into account in the next round of revisions.
Right.
One is that I don't see that there's any mention of which rules of order the corporation or the board of directors is to operate by. This is always wise to do because otherwise in court, anyone who wants to make concern, they can challenge for lack of due process. So it should be named. It doesn't have to be Robert's Rules of Order. There's a couple of other alternatives. But whatever the rules of order are, they should be named. We just saw one where the friendly amendment almost went in a very funny direction. So, and the assertion of the different process was per Roberts. The second comment I had in Googling quickly on the internet, I see that there's an Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. I don't know if the template's been reviewed for compliance. With that, there's a bunch of rules. Oh, yes? Oh, that's great.
I believe it has.
So
That's it.
I can add to that we are federally incorporated.
Oh, there's a federal
so
act too.
It's the Federal Not-for-Profit Act.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So I will say that there have been also comments in the chat. And the chat, I believe Mary and Laura will be able to retrieve the chat and take your comments from there and use those for the board discussions over the next year. We have James, Aida, and Teresa, and then I will have to cut the discussion and call the question. So, and I know I'm not following Robert's Rules of Order, but please forgive me if I'm a bit pushy here. James.
So I've put the bulk of my concern already in the chat because it has to do with the text of the discipline bylaw. The overarching concern being, because I work in this field, the way we've written it right now, you give somebody notice that there's a concern about their conduct such that might be subject to discipline. They give you a response in writing and the board must make a decision within 20 days. But it might be the case that they give you their response and all the board is really left with is a question as to, well, what, now we don't know who to believe. We don't know quite what happened. We haven't left ourselves any room to actually investigate or take interim steps to figure out what occurred in that sort of instance. We've boxed ourselves in that you have to make a decision. So I would suggest just rather than must notify the member as to a final determination, give yourself room to take interim steps if necessary.
Thank you, James. And I think that, again, we will take that under advisement for the next bylaw revision. Hopefully, we will not need to make such decisions over the course of the coming months. But now knowing that you have legal, Aida.
In case
Quickly,
of
please.
conflict of interest, I support Stefan. Recusal would be necessary, and I feel strongly about this point.
Thank you. Thank you. Teresa? Teresa, you're still muted. There you go.
I agree with the comment that, you know, you're asking for our input, and I realize, I appreciate that you don't want to run beyond like the time limit, but I think it's important for people to be able to make these changes, and maybe some of them need to be made now. So I don't know if it's possible to maybe submit another draft. Does it have to be approved at an AGM, or can we approve it later on? But I think some of the comments about like quorum and sort of this, you know, dismissal of members and so on are very important. And you might think, oh, it's not going to be a problem this coming year, but you never know. So I think we should really make those changes soon rather than later.
Thank you, Teresa. I do take that point, and I know the board does very much to heart as well. We have already agreed to the 10%. That friendly, at least the board has agreed to put the friendly amendment in. I don't know if the board would like to consider putting in the recusal is the required action in the event of conflict of interest or not. Again, Jerry, Joan, Mary, John, other board members, if you welcome that as a friendly amendment, that might be something fairly straightforward to do. Jerry, would you like to comment on that, and then we'll move to the question?
I mean, I'm not opposed. Does anybody else care?
It seems quite logical.
I'm not opposed
Recusal
either,
is
but
the
I'm trying
required
to.
action.
Sorry, I'm not opposed, but I'm also not an expert on this. I'm trying to think of situations where we may regret it being required, and I haven't come to one yet. So maybe we should just leave that for now, and if it has to be revisited next year, it can be. Dan has maybe, I don't know.
Can I speak? I
think we will make that change. Okay, Janet is saying that I see James Stevenson's proposed change. This is relating to the 20 days. I think, James, you yourself said that was quite technical, and I believe you nodded your head when you said that we could look at it over the course of the year and come back with a change. I do admit, as Janet has pointed out, there could be a problem, but it is more complicated to do at this point. So Jerry, again, I turn to you. I don't know if you've seen James's comments in the chat.
You're on mute, Jerry.
I'll just say quickly, I provided some proposed wording in the chat that, if friendly, could be adopted.
Okay, so I'll read it then, James, if you'll permit. The discipline bylaw states, if written submissions are received in accordance with this section, the board will consider such submissions in arriving at a final decision and shall notify the member concerning such final decision within a further 20 days from the date of receipt of the submissions. The board's decision shall be final and binding on the member without any further right of appeal, unquote. The difficulty is that this states the board must make a decision within 20 days of receiving the submissions. It's not hard to imagine the facts around a potential dismissal being in dispute and the board wanting to gather more information. So I would suggest allowing the board to notify the member with 20 days of receipt of the submission within 20 days, as to any interim steps which the board deems necessary, or whether a final determination has been made. So I think that having looked at that, it's pretty easy to make. Do we agree to make that? Angela, could you pull up that section on the discipline bylaw, the 20 days piece?
Yeah. So if written submissions are received in accordance with this section, the board will consider such submission at arriving at a final decision. And is that where the new stuff comes in? And notify the member, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's must make a decision within 20 days. And so instead of just must make a decision, it's notify the member within 20 days of the receipt of the submission as to any, it's adding the words as to any interim steps, which or whether a final determination has been. So I think that people are seeing this in the chat. So I think that the amendment could be typed in later. So with that, I'm going to use my chair's privilege to call the motion based on these 3 friendly changes that have been proposed. The motion is, be it resolved that the CAFES bylaws be amended as noted with the 3 friendly amendments proposed. Moved by Jerry Churchill. May I have a seconder from the membership, please?
Diane
I'll second.
Diane McIntyre. Thank you, Diane. Okay, then moving along. Thank you all very much. Good discussion. We have a separate motion regarding the level of membership fees. And you have received this as well.
Point of order, we didn't vote.
Oh, sorry.
I'm against.
If there are any objections, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we will deem it approved.
Okay, so I'm sorry if my secretarial work is too slow. My computer is a bit slow. James, I think there was agreement to bring in your wording to open a further door for the board not to be in that corner that you identified. So can you commit to, after this meeting, help me get the grammar right in that paragraph?
I'm quite content to do that. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. I think that gets us over that difficulty that I'm having in terms of the grammar right now.
Jennifer, there is an objection to the vote. Dan's got his hand up.
Dan. Yes, please, Dan.
I have difficulty with, I think it's premature to move forward with making recusal an automatic thing, because this is a community organization and you'll be dealing with community things that each affect the participants. Everyone's going to be, and potentially in law on a challenge of a decision, everyone is in conflict of interest. And it could get even more specific with somebody talking about street bylaws when they happen to own a business on a street. It might not even be about that street, potentially a conflict of interest. Community organizations don't normally have a stiff rule as that because of this problem. Everyone who's in a community in a representative function is there because they have a conflict of interest. It is their interest. And all these issues will have that problem. And you do want to think about the trouble that can be caused by a single member joining, perhaps even for disruption purposes, using the framework to defeat things. So I think that that should be considered along with the rest. And I'd be happy to defer that to the board's consideration to recommendations the next time, but I would leave the previous wording as it stood on the recusal. That's my reason.
Thank you. Right. So if people are, I guess we have to ask now if people would prefer to go or are comfortable going back in 31B to the original wording suggested remedy with the possibility that over the course of the year, the board will consider further on this. And if people feel strongly that we should move ahead with the change in wording, please put up your hand. And James, I think perhaps this is something that over the course of the year, we could consult with you. Okay, so we're going to leave that one as is. So then I will repeat the motion. And again, the voting, unfortunately, I think the simple thing is just don't raise your hand if you agree with the final motion. The CAFES bylaws be amended as noted with friendly amendments. Right, and okay. 10% changes to the section on the 20 days decision as per James's proposals, and recusal.
Leaving it as is.
Leaving it as is.
Okay, so you mean back to the suggested remedy?
Yes.
Yes, because we are a community group, and very good example of a business that is talking about streets but happens to be on a street and have concerns about the street. So good. All in favor by not raising your hand? Anyone opposed by raising your hand? Okay, approved. Well, all right. Sorry, Philippa, we are definitely over time. However, the next one's going to be quick, right? So the motion regarding the level of membership fees. Membership fees have already been implemented. So I will simply read the motion. Whereas the board adopted the current organizational structure and proposal for membership fees in December 2021. Whereas this was presented to members at the first AGM on March 21, 2022. Whereas the board unanimously supports and brings to the membership at the 2023 AGM, be it resolved that starting for 2023, membership dues are set at $25 for individual membership, $100 for organizational membership, with fees waived for individuals or organizations facing financial hardship upon request to the CAFES membership administrator. And this is moved by Akil Mesuwala. If Akil has, yes, Akil is here and will move this motion. May I have a seconder, please?
I second.
Felix Wellfield, thank you very much, Felix. Anyone opposed, please put your electronic hand up. Therefore, all must be in favor. So that is carried. Thank you. So now I need to ask Dinah to present the financial report.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dinah Robinson, and I am here. I'm the interim treasurer, and I took over the position after Barbara Ramsey stepped down at the beginning of the year. I'm here tonight to present some highlights of the 2022 financial position for the year ended December 31st, 2022. I believe you will have all received this package. Yes, Angela has put it on the screen. The Community Associations for Environmental Sustainability 2022 financial statements. There are a few pages, and we should start with the next screen, which is called the Statement of Operations. Yes, thank you. Cafes had $62,600 dollars of revenue this past year, and and a little more than the previous fiscal, and pretty much right on track with the budget target that was set for the year. We did have some surprise activity that led to revenue, like the mayoral debates. And we had surprise, lots of work, but it was, great fundraising and sponsorship and energy, and did a lot of good in other ways, but it hit our bottom line. And we also had a fantastic pollinator plant sale where there were some profits. So there are always new ideas for funding, and I really would like to thank all of the generous supporters of Cafes, whether large funders, our partners, our sponsors, our fabulous interns who do so much great work for us, and the board members, and of course all the volunteers who help to keep things rolling. That's really where the engine is. Without your support, Cafes wouldn't be able to do all the great things that Angela's out there promoting and talking about at Environment Committee, because a lot of that information has percolated up through others, and it's the result of our collaboration that really makes us so effective. And I'd just also like to thank members. We're transitioning now to this this fully membership-based organization, and it is important to recognize the contributions that you've made, and those funds allow us to do things like pay for the Zoom account that is hosting this meeting, and the board insurance, and our bookkeeping expenses. So that stuff, without that, we couldn't go out and spend so much time on grant applications and huge days at Environment Committee, where it was 4 hours on item number 1 alone. But yeah, there was a great buzz that came out of it. So having said all of that, I'd just like to look back at the numbers. I don't want to go through all the details, but I'd just like to highlight a few of our terrific funders. Allowed us to, through OCAF and OCH, and some money we got through TD Friends of the Environment, and our bank, Alterna Savings, and we did a lot of great work, and we kept our expenses fairly low, and we ended up with a net profit of about $6,500. And that was against, I'm sorry, this doesn't have the budget comparison, but we were anticipating having between $0 and $5,000 in profit, depending on how much of the funding came through. So yeah, we did pretty well at managing our expenses. And one further issue, of course, I would normally be presenting now a motion for you members to approve the financial statements. Oh, I didn't actually talk about the balance sheet, did I? I'll continue this statement first. It has come to my attention that there is actually an error in the expenses, and this occurred, it came to my attention after we had finalized the results, And after the accountant had left on holidays, and of course, there was no time to produce another set of financial statements before this AGM. So of course, you know, every sort of problem that could have occurred did. And here we are tonight. Instead of saying, please approve these statements, I am going to have to ask you to now look at a little sheet that has a minor revision on it because it came to my attention. It's my obligation to report it and try to have it adjusted. So there was an expense that should not have gone into 2022 because it actually relates to 2023 funding. And there's an accounting principle called the matching principle. So we have to make sure the expenses go with the revenue. And we missed something. So the something was valued at $727. There were some administrative expenses, and we need to remove them from last year. We still have to pay them. They're valid expenses. We'll just put them through in this month, March of 2023. So we're going to reduce the expenses from 2022 by $727, and we're going to move them, and our net income will be increasing by the same amount. So then we will have a new net income of, it's not on that sheet, the new net income will be $7,205. And we will also have an impact on the balance sheet where assets and liabilities will be going up by $727, resulting in a balance of $10,836. Excuse me, I need some water. Okay, so it's an accounting thing. It's like a rules of order. What happened was we ended up with something that wasn't matched. So we have to process it in this special way. So I'm asking for your approval now to amend the statements with this $727 adjustment. And then we will just pay those bills in the current year, and our books will be all in order. It's all about.
Second your motion.
Oh, was that Felix?
Yes. No, it's
Thank
Irwin.
you,
Irwin.
sir.
Irwin.
Oh, Irwin. Okay, appreciate it.
So if I may leap in then, Dinah, once again, if you agree with the motion to approve the financial statements with the amendment coming forward as Dinah indicated, you do not need to raise your hand. If you would wish further clarification or have a comment, please do. But otherwise, oh, Duncan has raised his hand, I think. Oh, yes, Duncan. Mhm.
I noticed in the financial statement for 2021, there was a $25,000 loan, short-term loan.
Yes.
I presume that's been discharged because it doesn't appear on the books for this past year. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It was a short-term loan. It was a bridge loan that we leveraged Sustainable Eastern Ontario so that we were able to hire and pay our interns, and then we managed to get some funding through an eco internship program. So it was just to kind of keep us going at the beginning.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. So there's no debt hiding away in the closet that's going to come and bite us.
Oh, okay,
No.
great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dinah. Okay, thanks, Duncan, for the question. Janet.
Yeah, hi, Donna. I
Hi,
put
Jen.
my question in the chat. which is looking at the $7,000 of net income. Is any of this identified as grant funding with restrictions, or is it like free unrestricted money like membership fees? So if you can talk a little bit about the composition of the $7,000 net income for the year.
So the net income is actually, it's not encumbered. Like some of it does represent membership fees. So there is a type of an obligation with respect to that, but it is made up of profits that came through from managing the debates, as well as funds that came from the pollinator plant sale. And it's got some sponsorship dollars and some donations. And that would be the composition.
So you mentioned membership fees. So there are some obligations. So what's the accounting procedure that you use? Do you just cluster them together, or do you actually use the deferred revenue to enable a charge every month?
Well, with respect to membership fees, we have just, we're just using like a cash accounting basis right now. With everything else, it is an accrual accounting methodology because we apply for funding, and there are contracts associated that run over a period of time. And even in one case, we have to set up like a separate general ledger account. The membership dollars are, because they're brand new, it's not something like we don't have a huge influx of money at just one time of year at this point yet. So it would be difficult to like recommend that there be another methodology. But it's definitely something. If a business grows, then they have to adapt to how that income flow would be. And sometimes there's the monthly donor sort of methodology. But yeah, right now it's just on a cash.
If I may, Janet, if you have further questions, perhaps we could do that offline.
No,
I don't
have any other questions.
Oh,
It's just
okay,
that she
great.
mentioned membership in her answer, so I followed up.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Could we then, once again, we have Dinah making the motion, Irwin seconding. If there are no further objections or comments or questions, I should say, we will consider that approved. Financial statement approved. Thank you, Dinah. And now I believe Dinah has one more motion, and then we need to get to our board approvals.
Okay. And yes, I have another motion, and it has to do with waiving an audit. If you're at last year's AGM, this may sound familiar. If you're part of other NGOs, you will understand this as well. We have a financial review that is completed on an annual basis. And under our federal incorporation, we are not required to have audited statements. As the business would continue to grow, there may be a requirement, but our bookkeepers have advised us that they're looking at like a bulk rate, and it would still cost up to $1,000. And we have better uses for $1,000. If it's not mandatory, we're not going to do it. So here is the resolution. In accordance with the guidelines of the Canadian Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, Cafes Ottawa is considered a non-soliciting corporation and is not legally required to produce audited financial statements. As such, the membership chooses to waive the appointment of a public accountant to conduct a review, engagement, or audit. the membership chooses to conduct a compliance review of the financial statements instead, which has been prepared by Green Books, an independent third party. They are our bookkeepers and we pay them to do our monthly statements and the annual reports.
Thank you, Dinah. So Dinah is making that, moving that motion. May we have a seconder, please?
Diane.
Diane, thank you. Diane McIntyre is seconding. If there are is anyone who would like to vote against this, please put your electronic hand up. Otherwise, we will consider this accepted. I should say that one of the things that Cafes is aiming at is mostly consensus as opposed to votes and counting all the numbers and tabulating and so on. So it's good to see that people are generally in accord. Thank you so much. So we will consider that carried. Thank you, Dinah.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Great. So now board renewal. So
Dan has a question.
Dan has a question. Dan.
Is the word compilation in the motion we just consented on a spell check error? Or is it actually compilation?
Compilation.
No, it's
Because you use compliance in your statement in your words.
Oh, the membership chooses to conduct a compilation of financial statements.
Sorry if I said the wrong word. I have compilation written on my screen. So
That's the right word?
The wrong word. I'm sorry. Yes.
That is, compilation is right.
I'm looking at, it does say compilation.
Yes, fine.
Okay, good. Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
Okay with that, Dan? Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So first of all, the board renewal, the board is presenting a motion on director renewal strategy for the membership consideration and we hope approval. And then after that, we will introduce the slate of candidates for the board. As you may recall from Angela's bylaw presentation, there is reference to a director renewal strategy. The board is proposing the following motion regarding this strategy, which contains 5 key points. Be it resolved that the Cafes director renewal strategy is A, to use a system of staggered 2-year terms to preserve board continuity and corporate memory. B, to put a limit of 6 years continuous service for any board member to safeguard renewal and vibrancy of the board. C, to endeavor towards a balanced representation of board members from rural, suburban, and urban areas. D, to be committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and welcoming applications from Indigenous people, racialized people, people with disabilities, members of the 2S LGBTQI+ community, women and/or non-binary people, youth and Francophone people, and E, to establish a standing committee on board renewal to be responsible for board succession, filling any vacancies, and performing due diligence for board member recruitment. This resolution is moved by Mary Hegan, and I would like to call for a seconder from the membership, please. Iola, are you seconding the motion?
I can second the motion, but that also means I would like to make a comment.
Oh,
when you
okay.
Once a motion is seconded and it's on the floor, then it's open for comment, and I have a comment.
Mm-hmm. True, although normally I think you would not second it if you have a comment that might change the motion. Is it just a comment, or
no, actually, that's not correct under Bruno, anybody can second a motion. It does not mean that you agree with it or that you don't want to make a comment.
Okay.
But if it bothers you, somebody else can second it, and then I'll make my comment.
Iola, please second it, and please go ahead.
You might want to consider allowing a cool-off period, I guess you would call it, after the 6 years for someone being on the board. Then maybe they could come back in a subsequent year, not like year 8 of their membership. So you will get that continued corporate memory, but you will get the kind of renewal that I think you should have. So I agree with your renewal strategy. I just think that you might want to consider allowing a board member to come back, but not immediately. Have to be a cooling off period.
Thank you for that comment. Diane, do you also have a comment?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you're muted.
My comment is on part D, which I agree with, but I would like to have a rewording. To be committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion of men and women, and welcoming applications from blah, 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 blah. You've left out men, and I'd like to start with men and women.
So I will have to turn it over to Mary, who is moving this to consider that.
I just think that too often, kind of women are put at the end of the list, and it should start with women and men.
Because we
Or
have
start with-
women further down,
Yes, but you don't
but
have
we don't
men.
have men at all. Yeah.
No, so inclusion of a variety of people from the community, including men and women, and welcoming applications from blah, 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 blah. But I would like to see both men and women, because while I'm happy you've specified women, and I hope that they would be at least 50% of your board, I would like to see men there too, please.
I think I would like to refer to other existing board members as to how they feel about that change. Since we did look at it as a board to suggest to you tonight. And if I'm okay with it, if I get okay from the existing board members. Looking at you, Joan.
Thanks, Mary.
I thought that was really well said, Diane, and I totally agree.
That
Jerry?
was
Yes.
Jerry. Okay. So Joan, Akil, and John, I know you're here.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
John?
Sorry, in my secretariness, Diane, did I put it in the right place or should it be later?
Well, I guess, Angela, I would like to see it welcoming applications from all community members, men, women, Indigenous people, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't want it to exclude anybody. And at the moment, it was seemed to be excluding men, which, well, I appreciate the contribution of women to our community. There's also a hell of a lot of men who make a very, very big contribution, and I don't want them to feel excluded. Because on the side of those who've been excluded for so many years, I don't want to exclude the other primary gender.
I see that.
Jenny. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I see that Magdalene has a comment. Magdalene, would you like to speak? You're on mute.
I find the Francophone people really odd there because, I mean, how many languages are spoken in Ottawa, and why we want to mention Francophone. And even if the city refuses to declare Ottawa a bilingual city, it in fact is in practice a bilingual city. And I think that it should just end with non-binary people, comma, and youth, period.
Mary, would you like to remark upon that? Was there particular discussion about Francophone, needing Francophone representation on the board?
Does not all community members mean that?
It does. It does.
Yeah. I think it's personally, I think it's a point well made, but I'm just one person of the board here, so I'm having a little difficulty, Jennifer, quickly getting consensus here. I think we got the other parts done very well. It's just I don't know whether others on the board have a feeling about the Francophone piece.
I find this a very Canadian discussion. In fact, it's very heartening to see that we do want to be as inclusive as possible, but to get the wording right. So I think maybe we could turn to the other board members to see if they're
Can I make a point?
Yes, please, Duncan. Mm-hmm.
I think this long shopping list is a bit of an issue. So I would suggest, why doesn't it simply say to be committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, full stop?
You know, I think there's a lot to be said for that. The Glebe report, that's what we say in our policy statement, which now appears in the Glebe report. And it just covers, you know,
it covers everything. So I rather than trying to worry about, you know, we've missed somebody or we've emphasized somebody too much. So that's just simple. It's simple. It gets rid of everything. Equity, diversity, inclusion. It says it all, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right, Duncan. Thank you.
Yeah, I support that.
Yeah, same.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it seems like all the board members do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. And then we can always revisit this one for next year if we have reasons to do so.
Yep. Sounds good. So the motion stands with that major change, and it's actually simply D will be to be committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Good.
Okay, that's a motion from Mary Hegan and seconded by Iola. Iola, you're still fine with seconding?
Can you hear me? The answer is yes.
Oh,
And
good. Okay.
I think these are great. Sorry, I can't
Thank you.
Something to mute or unmute.
That's good. So we have one last comment from Janet, and then we'll put the question again. Yes, Janet.
So I have a question. It's an inquiry. Does Cafe have a policy on equity, diversity, and inclusion? Because if we don't, then I would say that that's a follow-up piece to be done, so that we can fill this piece out, because there are many conversations when we say equity, diversity, and inclusion, and they're pretty white, and they really aren't as open as we would want them to be.
What if you left it?
So I don't know who was intervening there, but I would like to suggest that Angela and staff and board take that under advisement. There are probably a number of policies that cafes will be writing over the coming years, and that may be one of the first, as a matter of fact. Yeah, great. So the motion has been.
Janet.
Yeah. And now we have removed most of D, but we still have to be committed to equity, diversity, inclusion, with the understanding that the staff and board will take under advisement a policy in that area. We have a mover and a seconder. Any objections to moving forward with this renewal strategy? Great. Seeing none, good. So that is adopted. And we can move to the prospective board members. And we would like the prospective board members to take one brief minute for self-introduction and a statement of why they're volunteering for this board. And perhaps, since we are running very far over time, if you could just keep it to 2 sentences, that would be great. We'll begin with returning board members, of whom we have 3. I must say that I was very saddened to learn that Dinah will not be staying on the board. She has withdrawn her candidacy due to family health and elder care issues. Dinah, I know your contributions to the board have been amazing and valuable, so you will be missed. But thank you so much for your contributions to date. So Mary and Akil and John, very briefly, Mary.
Yes, it's an honor to put my name forward. This will be my 3rd year on the board, and I'm involved in a number of the projects, caucuses, and activities. And I just love the growing spirit of this organization, and I'll take it away and make it work for us.
Thank you, Mary. Akil.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I was late before. I got confused. This is my first year at the board, and it's been a big learning curve. Super excited to see the organization grow. And for those that don't know who I am, my name is Akil, and I am part of the social enterprise group of Cafes. So I'm trying to figure out how can we make money and have an impact.
Thank you, Akil. And John Milton. Has John had to leave us?
It would appear that way, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you've seen John's bio in the literature. Now I will invite new board members or new proposed board members to introduce themselves. Emma Bider.
Hi. Yep. I'm Emma. I'm a PhD student at Carleton in anthropology. I've gotten to know several people on this call through my research, and it's been a real pleasure. So I am excited to volunteer for this board because I think Cafes has a really exciting, offers really exciting opportunities and possibilities for collaboration across the city. And I'm really committed to developing a broad environmentalist movement across all of Ottawa in all of its expanseness. So yeah, thank you so much
Emma,
for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Magdalene Carson.
You're muted.
Oh,
yes. There you go.
Yes, well, I had the pleasure of volunteering with Cafes for several years now. I've been active in the climate movement for approximately 6 years in various ways, but I really feel at home in Cafes. All the different reasons in terms of quality of intervention. I like to say the boots on the ground approach to, dealing with concrete issues. I love the spirit of the organization, and I feel very close to the organization. So I'm really very honored to be here tonight and offer what I can. I mean, one of the things, I'm a graphic artist by profession, and one of the things I have been contributing is in the way of graphic arts, which in fact, and visuals, which in fact can be important. And I don't have the depth of knowledge that many have in terms of policy, but I'm extremely comfortable reaching out to people, knocking on doors, connecting with people. And I think this is something that we really need to do.
Thank you, Magdalene. And James Stevenson.
Yes, hello all. I am a lawyer and a Lindenley resident and a father, and I'm joining in the hopes that I can bring some of my pedantic lawyerly skills to honing our policies, advocating to our best ability, and really advancing our climate causes. Thank you.
Thank you, James. So John Sobel is also a candidate on this slate. Unfortunately, he has sent his regrets because he's just returning back from travel. He is a communicator. He's had extensive communications experience. He's multi-talented. He's been a manager of brand and digital strategy at the Canada Council for the Arts. He's a professional saxophonist and public speaker and author. He's motivated to be part of the Cafes board because he has children and wants to do what he can to not leave them a dying world. Also, he believes strongly in community building and community-based activism. So that is the slate of candidates for this year's election. And I am going to present the election motion. Be it resolved that this slate and term structure of directors is approved by the membership as the Board of Directors of Cafes. The slate of directors hereby elected shall determine among themselves within the next 7 days the holders of the following offices: Chair, Vice Chair, Treasurer, and Secretary. That the Standing Committee on Board Renewal shall endeavor to fill the 3 unfilled seats, preferably with suburban candidates or candidates otherwise filling gaps in board governance experience, representation, and expertise on the board. The motion is moved by Joan Freeman.
I'll second.
Erwin has seconded. Thank you. Please raise your hand if there are comments or questions. So seeing none, the motion is approved. So thank you all, and thank you new board members and returning board members. So many motions. Wow, what a night. So now it is my pleasure to turn the proceedings back over to Joan Freeman for closing remarks.
Great, Jennifer. Thank you. That was yeoman's work, and thank you everybody for hanging in. This may seem a bit painful, but you know, we now have a constitution, guys, and it's great. It doesn't have a notwithstanding clause, so congratulations. Unfortunately, there's one more housekeeping item to do before I let you go. We need to stay operational in the transition between boards. I and others are outgoing, and the new slate democratically who will be chair, et cetera, gets decided in their first board meeting. So in that gap time, we need to have some signing authorities. And so here's a motion that I wanted to put forward. Whereas Cafes requires at least 2 officers to have signing authority at its bank in order the expenses and payroll can be paid, be it resolved that Dinah Robinson and Liz Bernstein shall be authorized to continue to hold financial signing authority for Cafes at its alternative saving account until such time as a new treasurer and alternative are designated by the new board, and this treasurer and the alternate shall have been registered and recognized by Alterna Savings. The challenge is that both Dinah and Liz are stepping down, but they both agreed to this sort of bridging action until someone else can step forward. So can I have a mover, please? Oh, is that you, Jerry?
Yeah, that's me.
Can I have a seconder?
I'll second it. Roy Atkinson.
Great. Is there any, so we'll do the same. If there's any objections, please raise your hand. Otherwise, no objections. So I think we will say that the motion is approved, and thank you all members. Just congratulations and hallelujah. So congratulations to all of you who attended tonight for putting Cafes in a strong position now to succeed. And I really, truly mean that. We have the Constitution, the governance, and we've got our priorities sorted out. We're now organized to deliver on environmental priorities and support community groups across the city with networking, advocacy, and building their capacity. So for 2023, now that we've done a lot of this background work, Cafes can focus on all the issues we care about: climate change, trees, urban development, and everything else we discussed tonight. So thanks, Jennifer, also for so ably guiding us through the meeting, and Angela and staff for all the background work. And finally, as I step down, I personally wish to thank the present and outgoing board members and Angela for all the inspiring, effective, and heavy lifting work that has been done over the past 2.5 years that I've been involved. I just want to say that ultimately Cafes is a volunteer group. So it's all of you that have hung in tonight that make it. It's all of you and your hard work that make the difference. I encourage all of you to keep going and to invite others to join and to work together. Together we can make a huge difference, and we can mobilize hundreds and hopefully thousands over the next year. I'm just stepping down, but I'm not disappearing. And thanks again, all of you, for hanging in there. And thank you, a big thanks to the new board members and the outgoing board members, Angela, and signing out. I declare the meeting adjourned.
Woohoo!